You remember the pandemic, right? Total chaos. And we all kind of assumed that things like online classes and campus shutdowns were the biggest problems for student grades. But what if the real story, the thing that really made a difference, was happening inside their own heads? I've been digging into this really fascinating study that uncovers the surprisingly powerful factors that were actually shaping how students performed. So let's break it down.
So that's the big mystery we're tackling today. What was it? Was it the stress of Zoom University? Was it money worries? Or was it something else entirely? Well, we're about to dive into the data that points to two very specific answers. And honestly, one of them might really surprise you.
Okay, to really get this, we've got to rewind a little. Picture this, it's the summer of 2021. This is year 3 of the pandemic, and it was a really weird transitional time. A lot of students were heading back to campus, but let's be real, things were far from normal. Yeah, vaccines were rolling out and things felt like they were getting better, but researchers had this nagging suspicion that the fear and the total disruption of the past couple years had left a pretty deep mark. So they had this one crucial question. What specific things were really impacting a student's ability to actually succeed in class right at that moment? And that question is what kicked off this whole investigation. Now, all of these insights that we're talking about, they come from a study done at a very unique place, Berea College. It's a small liberal arts school down in rural Appalachia. And trust me, where this study happened is a really important piece of the puzzle. See, this wasn't just any group of college students. The study was focused on a population that's often way more vulnerable. We're talking about students from low-income families, many of them the very first person in their family to ever go to college. Now, they go to Berea completely tuition-free, but they're also required to work on campus. Understanding this background is what makes the study's findings so incredibly powerful. And that right there brings us to the absolute core of the research. When the scientists crunched all the numbers, looking at well-being, stress, anxiety, you name it, 2 factors just jumped off the page. They had a direct, measurable link to the student's grade point average, their GPA. And boom, here it is. This is the study's biggest finding, laid out as clear as day. The single biggest thing that dragged down a student's GPA was depression. And on the flip side, the single biggest thing that helped their GPA was getting good quality sleep. Think about that. It wasn't about being online or in person. It was all about mental health and rest. And this wasn't just some vague connection, It was incredibly real. The researchers could actually measure it. For every single point a student's depression score went up, their GPA went down by a corresponding 0.26%. Now, that might not sound like a huge number by itself, but it shows a direct mathematical cost to their grades. This isn't just a feeling, it's a number. And the effect was just as clear in the other direction. For every 1-point increase on their sleep quality score, their GPA got a nice little boost of 0.15%. This just perfectly shows that getting good rest wasn't a luxury. It wasn't something you do after the homework is done. It was a straight-up academic tool. But GPA is only part of the picture. The study also dug into how specific daily habits, lifestyle choices, were tied to the student's overall well-being. And the results here are just as eye-opening. Okay, get this. Students who exercised for at least 150 minutes a week, which is the standard recommendation, they didn't just feel better physically. They reported way higher overall well-being. And not just that, but lower levels of stress, anxiety, and depression. It's like exercise was this powerful protective shield for their mental health. Then there's alcohol. The data showed a really strong link between drinking and poorer mental health. Students who drank alcohol reported much higher scores for both depression and anxiety. And it didn't stop there. Alcohol consumption was also linked to a lower GPA. And the last key lifestyle factor they looked at was tobacco. You know how some people think of smoking as a way to relieve stress? Well, the data showed the complete opposite. Students who used tobacco actually reported feeling much more stressed out. So what's the bottom line? What do we do with all this? Well, these findings aren't just interesting little facts. They basically give us a clear roadmap for how we can support students better, not just during a crisis, but all the time. It really all comes down to these 3 things. First, sleep is not optional. It is fundamental to doing well in school. Second, mental health support isn't just a nice-to-have campus service. Depression is a direct threat to a student's success. And third, pushing healthy habits, especially exercise, can build this incredibly powerful foundation of resilience. And hey, don't just take my word for it. The researchers themselves summed it up perfectly. It's not that students with depression are any less smart or capable. It's that poor mental health literally attacks the tools you need to learn, like your attention and your ability to concentrate. It builds a wall between the student and the information.
So all of this leaves us with a pretty big question, doesn't it? This whole study suggests that maybe the best way to improve grades isn't more tutoring or new teaching methods. Maybe it's about totally rethinking our approach and finally recognizing that investing in a student's well-being, their sleep, their mental health, is one of the most powerful academic tools we have. What do you think?